The story of American independence does not begin with fireworks or with a declaration boldly signed in Philadelphia. It begins many years before, in the quiet struggles of ordinary colonists who dreamed of freedom but found themselves bound by the heavy hand of an empire. The 13 colonies stretched along the Atlantic coast from Massachusetts in the north to Georgia in the south, and though they were separated by forests and rivers, they shared a growing spirit of defiance that would soon ignite a revolution. Life in the colonies was often hard, yet it was full of opportunity. Farmers worked the fields, merchants built bustling markets, and families carved out a future on the edge of wilderness. But across the ocean, the British Crown watched closely, imposing taxes and laws that reminded every man and woman that they were not truly free. The Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts, all of them demanded money and loyalty without giving the colonists a voice. The phrase began to echo in taverns and churches, in marketplaces and meeting halls. No taxation without representation. The anger grew into protest, and the protests grew into resistance. In Boston, a harbor city alive with trade defiance burned brightest, when Parliament imposed the Tea Act in 1773. Colonists disguised themselves as Mohawk Indians, boarded British ships, and hurled crates of tea into the dark waters of the harbor. The Boston Tea Party was not merely about tea, it was a declaration of spirit, a cry that the colonies would no longer bow so easily to distant masters. The Crown answered with force. British soldiers marched into Boston, redcoats bright against the cobblestone streets. They called them the coercive acts, but the colonists knew them as the intolerable acts meant to punish Boston and to warn all others. Yet instead of dividing the colonies, it united them in 1,774 representatives from each colony gathered in Philadelphia for the First Continental Congress. Men like George Washington, John Adams, Patrick Henry, and Samuel Adams sat together not as strangers but as brothers bound by a shared destiny. Patrick Henry rose and spoke with thunder in his voice. "Give me liberty, or give me death." His words lit a fire that no army could extinguish. The first shots of revolution came in April of 1775 in the towns of Lexington and Concord. Farmers and blacksmiths dropped their tools and picked up muskets. Minutemen, they were called, ready to fight at a moment's notice. When the redcoats marched into Lexington, they were met by a small band of colonists. A shot rang out. No one knew who fired first, but that shot became known as the shot heard round the world. By the time the British retreated from Concord, the fields of New England were alive with defiance. Ordinary men had stood against the greatest empire on earth. As war spread, the Continental Congress took a bold step. They named George Washington as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. Washington was tall, solemn, and unshakable in his calm resolve. He led farmers and volunteers against the disciplined regiments of Britain. His army lacked shoes, lacked food, and often lacked hope, yet Washington's courage gave them strength. He crossed icy rivers, he endured bitter winters, and he never surrendered his vision of freedom. In the summer of 1776, the Congress gathered once more in Philadelphia. Inside the Pennsylvania State House, a debate thundered. Should the colonies declare independence, risk everything, and break away forever from Britain? Men argued passionately. John Adams pushed for it. Thomas Jefferson quietly drafted the words that would change history. On July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was adopted. It spoke of truths self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It was not just a statement to Britain, it was a promise to the world. But signing a declaration did not win a war. The struggle was long, brutal, and uncertain. At Valley Forge in the winter of 1777, Washington's men shivered, starving and sick. Many thought the revolution would collapse. Yet out of that suffering came resilience. Baron von Steuben, a Prussian officer, trained the ragged army into disciplined soldiers. They learned to march, to fight, to believe again. Allies came from unexpected places. France, inspired by the courage of the colonists, entered the war in 1778. 1778, their ships, their soldiers, and their gold shifted the balance. The Marquis de Lafayette, a young French noble, fought side by side with Washington, forging bonds that would last for generations. The war spread across seas and continents. Britain found itself fighting not only rebels, but a world united against its power. The final act came at Yorktown in 1781. Washington, with French allies, trapped the British army of General Cornwallis. Cannons thundered day and night until Cornwallis could hold no longer. On October 19, he surrendered his sword. The war was effectively over. The mighty British Empire had been humbled by farmers, tradesmen, and dreamers who refused to live in chains. 2 years later, the Treaty of Paris was signed, and the United States of America was born. The world looked on in awe. A nation founded not on kings or crowns, but on the idea of liberty itself. The revolution had not been perfect. Not all were free, not all promises were fulfilled, yet it lit a flame that would spread across generations, inspiring others to rise against tyranny. So the story of American independence is not merely about battles and treaties. It is about ordinary people with extraordinary courage. It is about a belief stronger than muskets or cannons that freedom belongs to all who dare to claim it. And though centuries have passed, the echoes of that revolution still resound, reminding us that liberty once won must always be guarded, cherished, and passed to the future.